Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And boy, oh boy, is it a special show today because we have some postseason basketball to talk about. We're going to be giving all of our thoughts and takeaways from the Western Conference play-in games last night. We are also going to preview a couple more playoff series towards the end of the show today and talk about the breaking news story, Jontay Porter getting a lifetime ban from the NBA for placing bets on his own games, which, believe it or not, is quite a big no-no. But we're going to start, Logan, with actually the second play-in game from last night, because the Warriors went out and they went out sad, man. And it just felt like a moment. Obviously, this team wasn't some looming title threat last year or this year, but for them to just get absolutely waxed like this by the Kings in the play-in, which historically has been Lil Bro, just to sort of add salt to the wound, for Klay to score 0 points on 0 of 10 shooting, it felt sort of like a collective awakening to, okay, this is really over. What were your thoughts on seeing the Dubs go down like that?
I mean, these things rarely end up, these things rarely end with you raising a pennant or raising a banner, right, man? I mean, this is kind of the natural progression for things as the dynasty goes, man. Sometimes you got to hold on a little too long, man, and you just got to hope that it's going to work out, and it just didn't for the Warriors. We've seen this coming from a little while away. Steph's regression this year, Klay slowly regressing after a bunch of just debilitating injuries and losing, any creation off the dribble, his great defense. And I mean, I just thought it was really telling. Like, the only reason that Golden State was even remotely close in this game, Carson, was stretches from Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody keeping them, even within striking distance in this game. Klay does put up an absolute dud, and it just goes to show, really how much of a burden Steph Curry had on his shoulders all season long. I know we talked about it a myriad of times with the Warriors, how much and how responsible he was for single-handedly driving the Warriors to success, but it goes to show you when Steph isn't at his absolute A-game apex, dropping 30 to 40 points, the Warriors have zero chance of winning a game. And then, like I said, man, that Klay was imperative to the formula of this team being relevant. He was their offensive number 2 for a while. And then during the title run, he had the luxury of being, the offensive number 3 behind Wiggins, where, he could have a couple off shooting nights.
Jordan Poole was the second best offensive player in that run.
Would you argue he was the 4th best offensive player then?
Wiggins was solid offensively. He didn't shoot that well. The reason that he was so damn impactful is he defended his ass off, but I probably would still say that he was more impactful with his athleticism, his aggression, than Klay, who was just pretty meh in that run.
Yeah, but, I mean, regardless, Klay was still getting all those shots, you know what I mean? He was always going to get a ton of looks, and it's sad. It wasn't even like a traditional bad Klay game where he's taking all these tough runners and he's taking, all these tough shots off screens. Klay had a bunch of open looks that he just smoked, man, where Keegan's knocking him down at the other end, and the Dubs just can't get him back. Yeah, I mean, they went out sad, man. It's a sad way to go out, but sometimes, this is the harsh reality that you got to deal with. It's the smack in the face that the Warriors need to wake up. And I felt bad for Steve Kerr, man. He was wearing it on his face all game long. From the turnovers early to the middle of the game, it was sad, man. You could just see it in front of his face. And I even thought his verbiage in some of the mid-game interviews, I can't remember if it was the end of the first, the end of the second, the third, but they were interviewing Steve at a point in the game, and he goes, basketball's a game of mistakes, and it's about limiting them. And I was like, well, no, Steve, not. I mean, I guess you could kind of dress that up as anything. Basketball is a game of runs. Basketball is a game of, insert whatever you want here. I just thought it was really telling that Steve phrased it like that. Like I said, man, these things rarely end with, the chip. And maybe the 2022 title prolonged this a little bit, Carson. You know what I mean? It extended and drew out this process a little bit longer. But I think this was the nail in the coffin, especially that it came to the hand of little brother in the Kings with, a great Keegan Murray game, a great Keon Ellis game of all people. I think the Warriors are going to have to look themselves really hard in the mirror and make some really tough decisions this offseason. I think it starts with probably Klay Thompson being let go and letting him venture off and find a new destination. And I don't know, man. I want your opinion too as a Warriors fan, like what the next step is. And do you try to retool? Do you try to rebuild? Do you move into a new era without Steph? Like what's next for the Warriors, man?
We'll get there, buddy. We haven't even talked about the game last night. We'll get to what's next because the reality is what's right now is a well-deserved, I would say, just reaming of the Warriors because that was an embarrassing performance. And I think that there were several fatal flaws with this team that have been a reality but were just put on display, just exposed in their worst form in front of obviously a national audience in a single elimination game with their season on the line. The most glaring one being the complete lack of shot creation alongside Steph Curry. There were just so many awful possessions in this game where the Kings did an awesome job of hounding Steph away from the ball, staying attached to him, making him just constantly work to get even the slightest bit of separation. And that led to a lot of Kuminga pull-up jumpers and too many Wiggins isolations and Klay bricking some contested jumpers and some open ones. But just the reality was there were no other quality sources of offense in this game. Like Kuminga had a stretch, but he ends up 6 of 15, and it ends up being you can bait him into taking those pull-up jumpers that he's just not good at. And that was always the thing putting the clearest ceiling on this team. Because in 2022, the Warriors, first of all, were a better team in a whole lot of ways. Like they defended at an unbelievable level throughout that season, and they had been defending really well as of late, but they did not defend well in this game, and they still didn't have that sort of ceiling with Wiggins' regression. This team was just older overall, right? Nobody really was playing at the level that they were that season. But one of the most significant things was Jordan Poole was an absolute stud in that run, and that is what this team desperately lacks. Anybody else who can reliably create a shot for themselves off the dribble. Anybody else who can float the offense. I mean, shout out to CP3, right? The guy is still super smart running pick and roll, but he is just such a predictable, non-scoring threat that he can't float the offense in the sort of meaningful ways that we're talking about. And so that's why I was adamant about the fact that this team had to go out there and trade for a second star shot creator offensively, ideally like a big forward. Pascal Siakam was the guy who was on the table for multiple years, and the Dubs obviously didn't pull the trigger, and I think that that dearly cost them here. Not in the sense that they would have been pushing Denver, not in the sense that they would have been like a top title threat, but they would not have gone out to the Kings like this. They would have had a puncher's chance in these first round series against good teams out west instead of just getting embarrassed, getting played off the floor by a team that had been playing worse than anybody out west in the playoff field recently that was down 2 key players. And the Dubs couldn't even capitalize on Steph's advantage creation in this game. Like if he did draw 2 defenders out of pick and roll. The Kings did a really nice job of swarming cutters on those 4-on-3s, so they really had no easy finishes. But it's just remarkable to me that Steph led this group to be a top 10 offense this year. It really is. And you see in those big stages, you just need somebody else who can get themselves a quality shot, or the defense can entirely key in on one player that is Steph. And maybe he should have just had the ball in his hands the entire game, but then that's obviously an unreal burden on him. They could not take advantage of the defensive attention that he demanded because they just aren't skilled enough offensively. The other fatal flaw that we saw was the glaring lack of size, and that's another reason that the Dubs have not been a legit team with a contending ceiling this year, because the West is now huge, and the Dubs aren't just lapping everybody else in skill the way that they used to be, and they aren't crazy athletic the way they used to be. So there are teams that can blend this really high-end skill with this monstrous size, and they just can bully the Dubs. And in this game, they got dogged on the offensive glass. It was 15-8. At one point, I believe it was 10-0, and they conceded a bunch of open threes off of offensive boards. It was just tip out after tip out, Sabonis offensive board, wide open 3 for a quality shooter. And overall, by the way, the Dubs just conceded so many open threes in this game. It was really a poor showing defensively. They couldn't contain De'Aaron Fox whatsoever. Would have been nice for them to have GP2, but they've always struggled with him. I mean, he's just so damn quick. And so that led to open threes. And then in the home stretch, they tried blitzing Fox a bit, and that just failed and led to open threes. And when Sabonis had anybody other than Draymond on him, they're playing these super small ball looks. You only get like 20 minutes combined between TJD and Kevon Looney. So anybody other than Draymond and Sabonis just can't hang. So then the defense has to sink in there. That led to open threes. At times they were getting caught under these handoffs or just chasing around a handoff. Now they're trailing the play, and that leads to an open three. Like, it was just a barrage, man. So many great looks from the Kings from beyond the arc, and their shot making was really good, but you can't look at that game and be like, oh, I'm so shocked that they were 18 of 39, because that was a lot of wide open looks.
I mean, and it felt like after the first half that the Warriors were just lucky to even be in that basketball game. Like,
yeah.
The Kings decisively won it, and I was so frustrated because I'm sitting there going, I'm doing a little kumbaya, man. I'm dancing in my living room and stuff. I'm celebrating like, oh, we're about to kill the Warriors. We did, but for the Kings to only be up 4 points at half, it was kind of ridiculous. Like, Steph was 2 of 5 with 5 points. Like, I think they were up 9-1 on offensive boards. They were winning the turnover battle 9-6. Like, and you talk about the effort, dude. To me, too, it wasn't even just, I don't know what it is about the Warriors, and like over the past couple, they'll just have these games where they just can't stop shooting themselves in the foot, man. And it was, like little examples, like Chris Paul trying to kick it back out to Kuminga, and there's just a little miscommunication. There just like wasn't full cohesion. Like, they got bodied in second chance points 25-9. They got bodied on the offensive glass 15-8. And they lose the turnover battle 16-8. Like, it was just a failure in every facet of the game.
It was. Literally everything that could have gone wrong went wrong in this game, basically. And ultimately, they didn't have a good answer in terms of size in matching up with the Kings or matching up on any of the matchups that would have been incoming.
I wanted to ask you, I mean, why didn't, because I thought that Looney did a good job in, like, the few minutes that he got, like, and I think that he's a good deterrent for Sabonis. Why didn't they turn to Looney more?
I think because he picked up 4 fouls in like the 9 minutes or whatever he played, and offensively he was struggling. I mean, they were kind of pushing him out to the perimeter and applying ball pressure, and he's obviously just not a vertical threat around the rim, and he's not a floor spacer. So I could have seen going to Looney a little bit more. I thought he was going to be more important in this game because he matched up with Sabonis so well last year, and he does do the things that you are looking for in a Sabonis counter. He can match up with him in terms of strength, and he can match him on the glass. But he didn't have the best go at it in this one, and he just hasn't been playing all that well. So I'm not going to shred them for not playing Looney more. I'm also not going to shred them for not playing TJD more, which I've seen a lot of people doing. TJD is really good. He's clearly their best center. He's been an awesome player down the home stretch of this season. This was a bad matchup for him. He is not a guy who is built to counter the physicality, the physical maturity of a Domantas Sabonis. And offensively, maybe he poses some problems with his ability to be a vertical lob threat, but he just looked overwhelmed early in this game. He looked overwhelmed. So I'm not going to say, oh man, you should have played TJD 20 minutes. And I also don't think that matters. I also don't think that was going to be the thing that swung this game when you got absolutely dogged across the board. Another fatal flaw that we saw on display for this Warriors team is, again, the consequence of the 2 timeline thing. It's not just that you didn't go out there and get that second star shot creator. It's that you have both held on to this aging core and put these players who are just too young to be delivering on contending teams in a spot where they have to. So you're too old and you're too young at the same time. It's like, Jonathan Kuminga, we need you to be our second best offensive player, our second shot creator, but you're just not like refined enough, and your decision making is suspect in a game like this. And then at the same time, we're paying CP3 $30 million just to be like good for 18 minutes a night for our second unit. Klay, we're paying $40 million, and this was an absolute disaster class from him. And I really just don't think he's a very positive player at this stage. Of course, he still has his nuclear performances, but Moses Moody should have gotten damn near every Klay Thompson minute in this game. Like, Moody, I want to say, played 13 minutes, gave you 16 points, and it's not just that he was knocking down shots. He was more effectively than anybody else capitalizing on the attention that Steph was drawing by cutting, just moving to the right spots offensively. He was defending his ass off. And you have Klay out there who is just a negative in every way in this game, right? He's slower, he's less athletic, he's taking the offense out of rhythm with these horrible shots. He's not playing with the same IQ offensively. And a lot of people are going to look at Steve Kerr and they're going to ream Steve Kerr for this game. And I didn't think he coached this game well. I also think he all year has received a disproportionate amount of blame for a Warriors roster that is just ultimately not up to snuff when we're talking about these contending teams. Like, yeah, he should have played Moses Moody more than Klay Thompson in this game. Everybody is getting mad at him for TJD. I don't really necessarily agree with that criticism. And the Dubs have had this predicament all year where basically any of your key players other than Steph and Draymond can just suck on any given night, and you have a bunch of role players who are in a super similar range. So you're constantly with the dilemma of, okay, who are we going to go with tonight? Like, nothing was set in stone, right? They're still trying to figure out the rotations basically in the play-in game. And at the same time, it's, if you do leave somebody on the floor and they don't play well, everybody can immediately point and say, okay, well, why wasn't X guy in the game? Because, right, there's maybe not a huge gap between the two of them. And just generally, I think when things go wrong, people like to blame the coach, and oftentimes they blame the coach more than they actually deserve. That's not to say that Kerr did well, but just like this entire reckoning of, oh, Steve Kerr is a terrible basketball coach, he's a fraud. I'm not with that. I'm never going to be with that. Not only do I think he saw the vision with Steph in a way that a lot of NBA coaches wouldn't have, that Mark Jackson certainly didn't, just in terms of weaponizing him and making him like the most valuable off-ball player ever. Also, just the culture that he established with this team that for so long was like the healthiest in the league, his relationship with these players. I'm never going to be in on the Kerr slander. And then the last fatal flaw, or the last really harsh reality that was exposed for this team, is that Steph hasn't been playing at a superstar level recently. And I absolutely think he is a superstar level player. I think he is still a top 8 player in the league. I think they did him a disservice by not going more all in when he has been playing at this level into his mid-30s now. But this was a rough game from him, and it's been a rough stretch. He struggled to separate from both Ellis and Murray on and off ball. Those guys did an awesome job on him. Keon's hands were absurd in this game. He just had a constant motor off ball, like never stopped working. Steph ultimately got him with a couple of cuts off overplays, but like for the most part, just him grinding him down like that was a huge positive. He just harassed him. Keegan, we gave props before for doing a good job on Steph. He's huge, so he basically threatens him as a jump shooter more than any other reasonable Steph matchup because he moves so well, and Steph just at this stage isn't quite quick enough to like really take advantage of Keegan being a bigger guy guarding him in space. So they did a great job, but last 25 games of the regular season, Jason, friend of the show, tweeted this out. Steph put up under 23 points per game on 57% true shooting. 9 games in that stretch with 18 points or fewer. Just was more prone to clunkers than we have ever seen since he ascended to this MVP level. So the Dubs had been playing good ball, but because of all those factors, like there was just a ceiling on this team. This was a very, very bad, ugly version of how things could have gone, but these were all the realities for the Warriors. And part of this is natural aging. No title window goes on forever. And I think that's something that some Warriors fans maybe need to come to terms with. I'm seeing some people perhaps disproportionately freak out. And the reality is your team has been built upon guys who are now in their mid-30s. You're not going to win titles forever. At the same time, the Warriors absolutely could and should be a better basketball team than they are right now. And these are the consequences of not going all in, not pulling the trigger on a Siakam trade. The 2 timeline stuff was always nonsense, man. It was hubris. It was arrogance. It doesn't work. You should have dealt Wiseman as a pick. You should have dealt Kuminga as a pick. You should have dealt Moody as a pick. The expectation any of those guys could legitimately contribute to a title run in their first or second year when you have a Pascal Siakam on the table, even if it was an OG Anunoby, that's just such illogical thinking, and it's bad asset management. It's bad team building. It's been clear that this team needed a second star shot creator, especially after Jordan Poole regressed. But like even before then, you just owed it to Steph to go all in. And props to them for getting the 2022 title because some things really went their way and some guys overplayed their means. But it's just disappointing because the Warriors front office absolutely does bear responsibility for this team being non-competitive in a playing game. Not for the fact that they're not a title threat in 2024, but for the fact that they can't go out there and win a playoff series. That is a product of bad team building.
I got a few follow-ups before we get into big picture stuff. One, I agree with you on the Steve Kerr thing, them figuring out the rotations. I think it's tough. I honestly would probably have done a Willie Green like approach. I would have just ridden the hot hand. Like, if Clay's not hidden, I probably would have just ridden Moody and B Pods more. Like, and I like the fact that both of those guys really complement Steph well. Like, you talk about Moody backdoor cutting. I mean, B Pods just knows how to play within the flow of the offense. In terms of Steph being off, like, they tried to run actions for him. You tweeted at halftime. I thought you made a great point that they should have just gone heavy high Steph pick and roll and seen what they could have created. But also, they were running off ball stuff, and Steph was just missing shots. You talk about
And
him
struggling to get open.
Yeah, you talk about him matched up against Keegan and Sabonis. I mean, it was remarkable. Like, Steph really cannot create separation the way he used to. Like, I don't know. It was really staggering to watch. And then you bring up the Jordan Poole thing. In retrospect, I got a couple of trade questions. Would you have still done that deal to get Chris Paul, knowing where the season ended up?
Well, it definitely didn't work out well, but Jordan Poole was also really bad this year. Like, there is that 2022 Jordan Poole in there somewhere who is super valuable to this Warriors team and what they need. But at that point, you're kind of just dealing with two suboptimal options. Like, I don't think Jordan Poole would have made a big difference for this team with how bad he was last year and how bad he was this year. And that's the thing. The Warriors won the 2022 title, and then they felt this is the core. Wiggins and Jordan Poole are key players. And then both Wiggins and Jordan Poole fell off a cliff, and something like that is kind of tough to predict, and it has put them in this predicament now where it's like, okay, you are trying to make the most of these bad contracts, and you don't have like super great assets to be flipping for star players, except for, of course, Jonathan Kuminga, who just should have been traded. I still feel that way, and I know that there are people who think, oh, well, he has this all-star upside, and that's the most important thing. You don't trade him when you have a player with that sort of potential. My thought is, when you have a player of Steph Curry's caliber, forget potential. You get him the dudes right now who make you a potential contender. And even if you're not going to be the title favorite, make yourself as good of a basketball team as you can be, because it's borderline disrespectful to Steph Curry that he has to go out there and try to carry this team offensively like he does every night. I mean, some of these possessions where he's not involved, like, put circus music behind them, bro. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing. That, to me, is just where I disagree with the Warriors front office approach. It really doesn't matter if Jonathan Kuminga is a top 30, 40 player 3 years from now. Like, you should have gotten a top 30 player right now 2 years ago.
Do you still feel that way after this game?
Yes, that's the thing that has put the hardest ceiling on this Warriors team. They just didn't have the second shot creator. And their path to getting that guy is not easy at this point.
No.
Unless they do trade Kuminga.
That's what I'm saying. Do you still want, for next season, do you want them to explore that to get a more win-now player?
I would probably do it. The Warriors are not going to do it because they're going to look at this and say, our title window is not meaningfully open, which I don't even disagree with. I just think it's depressing. And again, it's a disservice to Steph to go out and say, okay, we are a play-in caliber team. Like, give yourself a fighter's chance to make some playoff noise. You do not have that right now. And moving Kuminga is the way to make that happen. Like, he took a leap this year. He was impressive this year, and he had a really awesome stretch offensively in particular, but he's still just too unrefined offensively. He's not having a high enough impact defensively to where you're like, okay, yeah, this guy is going to be one of the top 3 players on our team and we're going to be legitimately good. It sucks though, because like the window is closed for titles. I think it is, because you can let Klay walk or you can sign him for cheap. I don't know if you're going to be able to sign him for cheap. I wouldn't pay Klay Thompson $30 million. No chance. Maybe somebody out there will. And I understand the sentimental value that he has for the Warriors. At the same time, it's like Steph needs to be your top priority. Winning needs to be your top priority. Klay is not going to help you do that at any sort of high dollar value. He's just not a priority to me. But even if you let him walk And even if you let CP3 walk because his contract's non-guaranteed, or you trade him, like you just can't have him at $30 million against the cap, you still don't have cap flexibility. You're still over the cap. And so then it's like, what are their moves? Trade Kuminga, which they're not going to do. Ideally, you could trade Wiggins for a better wing in the same role just because he's regressed. He's too inconsistent at this stage. Don't think you're going to do that. His contract isn't an albatross, but it's 25 plus million for several more years. I don't think a lot of teams want to give Andrew Wiggins that right now. I'd like to see them get a grown man center who can play in the non-TJD minutes. Like, I really do appreciate what TJD brings in terms of his athleticism, his rim protection, even his playmaking offensively. I think he's awesome, but I do want somebody who is a bit bigger and a bit stronger for certain matchups. But, like, again, these are the moves on the margin that can make them a more respectable basketball team. These are not the moves that are going to make them a title contender.
Would you be owning like a Zach Edey if he was available in the draft?
Well, they don't have a draft pick.
That's tough. Who has their pick?
I don't even remember, but they don't have their pick
That's
this year.
so tough, man. To not even make the playoffs and not have the pick, that's brutal, man.
Yeah, they're in a rough spot. So the window is closed to me. I would still consider trading Kuminga and whatever package you can build around him future first, but it does border on irresponsibility when you're not opening up the title window.
And it sucks because, I mean, you've been saying this for 2 years now.
Yeah.
From the mountaintops, man. We need to do this. I mean, even at the deadline this year when you were talking about Siakam or Markkanen, and it seemed like we were moving towards the Dubs making a move. I mean, it does make them meaningfully better just thinking about having a guy to alleviate the pressure. And I don't know. I'm not going to put this like individual loss or this season on Steve Kerr, but I definitely would have pulled the plug on Klay at some point in this game, man. Like,
he was awful.
He just impacts the game in such limited ways, and when he's not shooting, he's just a literal, complete and utter zero out there, man. I mean, I wouldn't bring back Klay. I'd try to clean house as best I could, man. Chris Paul, Wiggins. I'm trying to retool and just improve, man. Would you be open? I got to ask the question, even if I think it's stupid, and I think the answer is going to be completely no. I mean, are you interested in dealing any of the older guys like a Dre, like a Steph, like if you could really get big value back for it?
Well, dude, that's where I am at, like a crossroads with the Kuminga thing. Because it's like, if you have to give up Kuminga and draft capital, you are compromising your future down the line. And you are doing it when you are probably almost certainly not opening up an actual title window. You're just going to make yourself like more of a legitimate playoff threat who maybe you can make a Western Conference Finals run or whatever. I still think that needs to be the top priority when you have Steph. If you are not going to do that, then the question becomes, why do you have Steph Curry on your roster? Why do you have Steph Curry on your roster if you're going to prioritize a 21-year-old who is still too far away and your future 4 or 5 years down the line? Like, at that point, legitimately the best basketball thing for you to do is trade Steph Curry. It is, and get the wealth of assets that you can get. The Warriors will not do that, though, and that is the thing. They're straddling this line, as they have been for multiple years now, and it's just not a functional, effective way to build a basketball team. So, again, they have to choose a direction. They've had to choose a direction for multiple years, and now, like, their best window has closed. It has. But you have to pick a direction, and I legitimately do think you either trade Kuminga or you trade Steph. There's just not a world to me in which it's like, oh, well, Steph now is over the hill. He's 38, 39, but Kuminga is ascending, and he's all NBA level at 23, 24 years old, and now the Dubs have finally, like, synced up these two timelines. That's not going to happen. So I wouldn't trade Draymond. I still think he's so valuable. Defensively, obviously, is the fulcrum of everything. I think his ability to just run the offense is super valuable. And it's not like he's on a outsized contract. He, to me, is the guy alongside Steph you hold on to. They've been the foundation of everything. They can still be the foundation of a really, really good basketball team. It's just the roster around them that's lacking.
I mean, I was going to say, if you lose Steph, Dre's got to go with him, right? I mean, I feel like that's
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm saying they're not going to trade Steph Curry.
Yeah.
They're not going to trade Steph Curry. It's like trading
LeBron James. They're just going to be mid. They're just going to be mid. I mean, that's what they're relegating themselves to, unless Jonathan Kuminga ascends and takes a into another leap where he's a all-star level caliber, really efficient offensive player. And I mean, there's flashes and there's a chance for that, but like you said, man, it's his apex is probably 5 to 6 years from now, and Steph's going to be out of the league. And that's the weird thing too, man, is Steph is a guy who I can see, and I thought the same thing about Klay. That's what makes Steph was a guy who I thought was going to age gracefully, and I thought the same thing about Klay.
Well, hold on. I mean, Steph doing this at 36 is insane.
I'm saying
some of the greatest performance from a guard at this age that we have ever seen.
Let me be clear about something. I don't mean that he hasn't aged gracefully. What I was saying is I think Steph's a guy where he's going to be able to play until he's 40 or whenever he wants to retire, just because, I mean, he's a great shooter. It may not be like number one 25 points a game, but it's going to be like Ray Allen, where you can stick him out there and put him on the floor, and he's valuable just because you have to respect him.
Yeah.
So his role might change, but I really can't see a world in which Golden State trades him either. So I don't know. I feel bad for you, man, because as I get it. The Warriors is like a fan and a culture. It's like you can't let these guys go, but the rational basketball brain is telling you we got to pick a direction, man. I think the Warriors are going to continue to do this probably until Steph and Dre pull the plug.
The direction I would still pick is go all in around Steph Curry. I still think he's that good. I just think you owe it to him. And, dude, I don't think Kuminga is like this, oh, my God, what an incredible asset. What a bona fide, clear-cut all-star for years to come. I think he's really good. I think he's an exceptional athlete. I also think he's still a flawed basketball player, and you see that now. So he's just not the kind of guy who I would prioritize over Steph Curry, man. I just think you do owe it to him. Like, I'm not advocating for building a basketball team sentimentally. Like, bye-bye Klay. Klay is just not worth paying. But Steph is different because he is the greatest player in your franchise history, and he is still awesome. He had a rough stretch this year, but he was a superhero in last year's playoffs. He was a superhero in the 2022 playoffs. Still clearly an all-NBA level player. I just think you prioritize that guy. But it's tough, man. This was a really, really, really bad way for them to go out. And I was too high on this team early in the season. And I pretty quickly got off of that as it became clear that they weren't going to make a move for a second star shot creator. But I thought, compared to last year, like, this team is just clearly better. The young guys are better. CP3 brings a stability with the second unit that the Warriors haven't had. They've always really struggled in those non-Steph minutes. Jordan Poole was bad last year, so CP3 is going to be an upgrade. Like, these are all my thoughts. The depth is just better. And I think the biggest problem was comparing this year's team to the standards of last year's West, when the entire conference is just so much better. Like, it's not even that the Warriors aren't better than last year when they won a playoff series and then they were competitive in the Western Conference semis. It's that everybody around them is way, way better, and they didn't get better by nearly enough, and they never addressed the fatal flaws.
And I think that if they do go and get somebody else too, I think you just alleviate the pressure off of Steph so much where, getting a guy who can really take the ball out of his hands, maybe weaponize Steph more off ball. He's just going to be less fatigued at this point of the season. Like, I think he's just tired, man. Worn down. I mean, that's the thing is, like, LeBron has had, for example, right? LeBron has Anthony Davis. LeBron has D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves, where he can pick his spots a little more, and the Lakers can float. The Warriors don't have that luxury at all. Again, if Steph willed them to the play-in. Like, he had to will them just to get here. And it just sucks for him, man. When Steph doesn't go, and that's how it felt early in this game when Steph was missing shots. It was like, the Kings are going to have a chance here because Steph's not hitting everything. He's not going nuclear. I did get scared. My heart dropped when he hit that 4-point play at the end of the first half, man. I was like, oh no, dude.
I think that was third quarter, right? But
I think he had two of them. I think he had one at the end of the first half, and then he had another in the third quarter. When he hit that, I was like, uh-oh, man, the tide might turn. But it just didn't, and Steph was completely off. And in those games, it's like you're so reliant on one guy going above and beyond. I hope the Dubs get him some help, man. Like, just help him stay less fatigued, have less pressure on his shoulders, and are just competitive again. But I don't know if it's worth it, man, if you're not, just from a logical basketball perspective, like, if you're not going to win the title, then to me as a non-Warriors fan, I just kind of ask, like, what's the point?
It depends on the guy. Well, the point is that you're not just wasting the last few years of Steph Curry's career, because why the hell would he want to play for your team if you're not going to take building a contender around him when he is still that level of superstar seriously? It will probably depend on the player who comes available. If you could move Kuminga and picks for Lowry Markkanen, I'd do that in a split second. If it's Zach LaVine, maybe that's not as much of a needle mover. So it'll probably depend on who becomes available. We just don't know. But boy, they had some good options. Siakam, Bradley Beal was the rumor for quite some time and didn't pull the trigger on anybody. And I legitimately think that that is largely responsible for them being in this underwhelming a place right now. Let's give some props to the Kings, though, because this isn't just a Warriors funeral. I don't know that there's nearly as much to say about them, but Keegan was phenomenal in this game. Unreal shooting performance, obviously dialed in defensively. Keon Ellis was awesome, knocking down spot-up jumpers offensively, pushing the tempo, taking on that Steph matchup like a man, and just he's been such a diamond in the rough down the home stretch of this season for Sacramento, and this was a really awesome moment for him to show just how good he is and how valuable he can be. But everybody shot the hell out of the ball. I mean, Harrison Barnes was shooting really well from deep. He made that one turnaround where I think it was Dre who guarded him perfectly, and at that point you just kind of throw your hands up and you say, all right, this is just really couldn't get any worse. And if they're gonna shoot like this and defend like this, then Fox and Sabonis can create them enough good shots to where it's like, okay, the Kings could win the next play-in game, they could be competitive in a playoff series, but ultimately they're not going to shoot like this every game. Like, they've really shot the hell out of it. And I do still worry about the bench. And I also think that this was kind of a favorable defensive matchup in that their two best perimeter defenders could really key in on this one player, and they defended very well overall in terms of help and team defense. But this doesn't really change how I view the Kings. But I didn't think they were going to win this game, and they won it very decisively, and they deserve props for doing that, especially down Monk and Herter.
Especially down Monk and Herter, and the fact, I think you hit the nail on the head defensively. One, I think the Kings had a major chip on their shoulder from last season. I think they were peeved about getting bounced by the Dubs. Again, they saw an opportunity like sharks seeing blood in the water, and I think they saw a chance to take the Warriors out, and they took that really prideful. Keon Ellis took on a hell of a defensive assignment, but it was keying in on Steph. They don't have to try a bunch of other stuff because nobody else is going to burn them. Shout out Keegan. Keegan was the star of the show to me in this one, defensively, knocking down open looks. He scores the first 11 of the first 13 points for Sacramento. 32 points, 9 boards, 8 3-pointers made. He's an elite defender. He is an elite shooter. And where he really impressed me was closeout attacking, right? The Kings don't need him to be like a Malik Monk, getting into the paint, getting into the teeth of the defense, like playmaking. We need him to step up. I want to be clear about that, right? Without Malik Monk, somebody has to elevate their game to make up for the lack of not having him out there. And Keon and Keegan did this in this game. But where Keegan really impressed me was where, I mean, he is getting into the lane and knocking down mid-range jumpers and creating. I never really saw this for Keegan. He's really grown over his first 2 seasons in the league, and he really impressed me in this one. The guy I was disappointed with was still Sabonis, and I'm not going to rag on him too much. He's strong. He's really strong, and he's a tough matchup for some guys. I also think the Dubs just have centers that really match up well with him. If it's Dre, if it's Looney, Sabonis is like AD. He doesn't really have a bag. He's just going to try to bully you on the low block and lower his shoulder. And if they get out of it, if they somehow beat the Pels, I think they provide an interesting contrast to Oklahoma City, just in the fact that their center rotation is going to be Chet versus Sabonis and Alex Len. And, those aren't the best centers in the world, but Domas is really freaking strong, and I think he's going to move Chet around. Alex Len, he may be gangly and goofy. It's Alex Len, but he's still huge. He was knocking out, he made a couple crucial boards in this game, just hitting balls back out where he's just hard to move around. So I don't think I would pick my Kings to win, considering they're down Monk, they're down Herter, they're relying on Keegan and Keon. stepping up, but I do think they provide an interesting contrast to Oklahoma City, especially because of the Chet versus Sabonis and Len dynamic. Like, they're just bigger and more physical than Oklahoma City.
Logan is on his hashtag anyone but the Thunder spree. He's going to find a way to say he'd take anybody over the Thunder.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. The Rockets included.
And the Rockets, who unfortunately did not make the field, included. Let's talk about the other game. Lakers-Pels, just a much better basketball game. I mean, this was a really, really fun watch. What stood out to you in this one?
Well, I want to start with Zion Williamson. We can talk about the LA dynamic. Holy hell, dude. Yeah. Zion Williamson is a certifiable monster. That guy is a monster. 40 points, 11 boards, 5 assists before being taken out in the fourth quarter. And to me, it felt like the Lakers survived Zion Williamson. Like, I kind of wrote New Orleans off. The Lakers go on a 12-0 run in the second quarter. They go on a 13-0 run in the third quarter. Like, the Pels got kicked in their teeth. And, I mean, in the second half, they trail by 18 in this game. I'm sitting there writing my New Orleans eulogy on my computer and going, oh, man, LA to the freaking finals, getting all juiced up. I think the things that really swung the tide in this game momentum-wise, Larry Nance Jr.'s dunk kind of fired the crowd up, and then Trey Murphy hits a 30-foot deep three. And then Zion just put this team on his back. I mean, he really willed this team back into this game. The Pelicans closed the third quarter on a 19-8 run. They cut the lead to 7. Then they open the fourth quarter. They go on an 11-2 run in there. And it was all on the back of Zion. This is them closing, basically doing all of this comeback in the third and fourth quarter with Alvarado, Herb Jones, Zion, Trey Murphy, and Larry Nance Jr. This is not a great Brandon Ingram game. This is not a great C.J. McCollum game. This is the bench boys and Zion doing work. But it's mostly Zion just saying, I'm going to lower my shoulder, do something about it, figure out how to stop me. I mean, he's just effectively unstoppable. He is a tank. He is a bowling ball. I was trying to think of other objects that I could compare Zion to. Like, he's going to go through you, man. And I want to give New Orleans and Willie Green credit for telling Zion, be more aggressive. Like, this version of this Pelicans team with a Zion that is this, I'm going to take over the game, I'm going to dominate. This is a real threat and a real contender when Zion is committed to just getting downhill over and over and not being afraid to take over the game, right? I thought he was kind of passive in that last game. This one, it was back against the wall. This is a scenario where a lot of teams could have, tucked their tail between their legs and walked out. The Pelicans could have punted on this game theoretically. Down 18 in the third quarter. If you lose this game, you get another shot against the winner of the 9-10 matchup, and it's like, okay, well, we lost. Zion didn't. Zion put his head down and got to the rim and started putting up points. I'm serious. Like, with this version of Zion, if we could get him every night, I think the Pelicans would be one of the best teams in the West. And the thing that really was remarkable to me was just he was matched up against the best defensive player in the world. I consider Anthony Davis to be the number one, the best deterrent, and he was no deterrent to Zion on the way to the rim. I mean, AD is one of the strongest and best post defenders in the league. I want to be clear about something, too. I don't think the Lakers defended him exceptionally well. I think giving Zion that runway and letting him build up. Zion's a matchup problem, period. Let me emphasize that. Like, it's just hard to stop a guy who is this strong and can jump out of the building. And he's got such great touch. Like, he just absorbs the contact, and it just...
He had really good touch in this one.
It doesn't matter.
His touch isn't always that.
I don't think you should normally give him that runway. Like, he's always going to be a matchup problem, but I think you can counteract that by stopping him before he builds up that head of steam. I just hope he's okay, man. And I know he's dealt with injury things in the past, and I think we just have to deal with the reality. With guys like John Zion, I think they're just injury prone. When you are jumping this much with this much force, especially in Zion's body, you're just more prone to having stuff like this happen. I think it's just a byproduct of his style of play. I don't even think it's because I know a lot of people are probably going to take this and go, oh man, Zion's fat, Zion needs to lay off the New Orleans food, this and that. Zion's in the best shape of his life. And I just think it's his style of play. I don't really think it's anything. I think we've seen this guy slim down. I think he's in the best shape of his career. I just think it's a byproduct of his style of play. This was a star-making show for Zion Williamson, and I just pray he's healthy and we can see him this next game against the Kings. I mean, that really deflated me watching him go out against LA because Zion single-handedly had the Lakers reeling on the ropes, man. He had them shaken. Like, he brought the Pelicans back, and I really think the Lakers survive Zion Williamson. I'm not saying they don't win this game if he's out there, but it kind of just took the air out of the room and took all the momentum away
100%.
from New Orleans.
Zion was just unbelievable in this game. And on the question of like his build and how that relates to his being injury prone, even Zion slimmed down is still an absolute tank. I mean, he's still 270 pounds. And so that is still an exceptional amount of weight that your lower body has to just bear every landing. Like the impact of that. It's not easy, but that's always going to be his play style, and that's just going to be the reality. But he's a one-of-one athlete, and I just don't think Zion gets enough credit for that anymore. It feels like most of the time, if you're going to hear Zion mentioned by like a mainstream media outlet, it's going to be, oh, look at this fat disappointment. Look at this, whatever, endgame Thor, basically. Like this guy as if he's some sort of caricature. And it's like, no, he gets where he wants on the floor, dude. Nobody can stop him when he is super aggressive. And you saw that in this one. Like, we gave the Lakers praise for guarding him really well in the last game of the regular season and for being built to guard him well with AD, with big physical wings like LeBron and Rui. And I still thought LeBron did pretty well on him when they were like matched up in those one-on-one settings. He went through Rui though, and he just found so many opportunities in transition, was dominant in this game. As a cutter, just used his explosive athleticism to get those really easy looks around the rim. He was just not going to be denied. And I thought he defended pretty well in this game. And he was just the whole offense for New Orleans. Like, he really was. Nobody else scored more than 12 in this game. B.I. and C.J. were both total letdowns. He is one of those very rare forces in the sport who, he's not a top 5 player. He's not a top 10 player, but one of those rare guys who can be truly unstoppable because of his physical advantages. And that's what you saw in this one. When he is healthy, he is that guy who you build around and you confidently say, if we manage these things correctly, we can be a contender. And it just absolutely sucks that he got hurt. I'm not optimistic about us seeing him in the play-in. I worry about a hamstring injury, especially given that obviously he didn't come back and he's just so dependent on his explosiveness. There's really nothing that makes it harder to explode than having a messed up hamstring. So unfortunately, I'm not confident that we see him again, but this was just an awesome moment and validation for this dude who just gets a really weird amount of hate and doubt. And I also think it was sort of illuminating to maybe the direction that the Pelicans should take their team building. I don't want to do like a season eulogy because it's not over. They have another game. Maybe Zion does play, but the reality is the Pelicans closing without B.I. and with CJ just playing a bad game, you felt good about. And they just haven't built the most cohesive big three here. When Zion and CJ and Brandon Ingram are all on the floor together this year, the Pelicans have a -3 net rating. When Zion plays with Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, they have a +6 net rating. It is a huge difference, and you just have such exceptional 3-and-D wings here. Like, Herb and Trey are as good as that mold gets, basically. You put a downhill force like Zion with shooting and defense like that around him, and you probably just need one, like, high-end perimeter shot creator. One guy who can bring you that skilled shot making that Zion doesn't. And then when you have two of them out there, you're compromising your defensive ceiling. So if I were the Pelicans, I would probably move off of either CJ or BI. The problem is neither of those two are good enough to be like consistently your lead perimeter shot maker. They kind of need the aggregate shot making of, okay, well, if one of these guys is off, the other one can carry us in this specific matchup. And then I'm not opposed to like just being willing to say, okay, we'll close with one of these guys, Zion, and then our super switchable, really high-end wings. The problem is just you're paying all of these guys like star players, and so that limits your ability to add talent around them when I'm just not sure that this is like the best fit. And your 3-and-D wings are just so damn good that you need them out there. But I do worry. It's like BI not consistent enough probably to be your perimeter number one. And CJ, like in the home stretch this year, was awesome. And specifically just like having that sort of volume pull-up three-point shooting, because that's another thing with BI. Neither he or CJ threatens the rim. Neither he or CJ is like a real playmaking hub. BI is a really good passer, but I'm talking about like they can just carry the load of running pick and roll every possession and creating great shots for the team no matter what. But at least CJ, it's like you have the volume 3-point shooting stuff. With BI, he's just not going to do that, and so you end up with a lot of tough twos. But he's just better, and so he probably is the guy who I'd prioritize. But I would love to see like Zion, BI, Herb, Trey, and then they have to upgrade the 5. I'm talking about as their core group going forward. Valanciunas just has to be gone. Like the not really floor spacing 5. Like, he'll take his 1-3 a game, but at the end of the day, you don't really have to guard him out there. Who's a non-vertical threat, okay passer, but poor defender, nearly 32 years old. He's expiring. He's gone. Like, there's just no way that they reinvest in him. And Larry Nance is close to being the answer man because of how switchable you are with him, because he's athletic. He does so many things well. He's a pretty good passer. He's a solid floor spacer. I just don't think you can legitimately run with him at the 5 because of his size. If he were 2-3 inches bigger, then that'd be perfect. So I think New Orleans probably targets someone cost-effective in the draft, maybe like a Kel'el Ware out of Indiana. I want to watch more of him, but I just think he's in that mold. What? You don't like him?
No, I mean, I just saw, not that Ware can't succeed. Every live game, I saw that kid miss like 6 or 7 free throws, man. He just can't shoot.
Bro is hating on his... Can't shoot. He was like 42% from deep.
I mean, from the line, every game I watched, he'd be like 0 of 7 or 0 of 6 from the line. It was just kind of painful to watch.
That's obviously hyperbolic. I think he was like 64% from the line, which isn't great. Like, I'm not saying that he is going to be as effective a shooter as the raw
if you could get like
this year would indicate, but he has obvious floor spacing potential and obvious rim protecting potential. Again, like, I want to dive more into him, but I'm just saying, if you're going to be picking in the early 20s, getting a cost-effective guy like that who has the size, who has the floor spacing potential, that's just the hole that I think they need to fill on this roster.
Yeah, and I'm still debating on who I like between maybe like a Filipowski or something like that too. I'm still debating on who I like more. I've soured on
Filipowski. I just don't think he's in the mold.
Like in terms, because he's not as great a vertical athlete or what?
Yeah, I think they need an athlete at
he's
the 5.
A little... Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if I like Filipowski as a starter or if he's more like Frank Kaminsky in the league. I'm still debating, but...
Sucks to be Frank the Tank in the league, no offense.
You don't want to be Frank the Tank.
Don't want to be Frank the Tank. Anyways, the Pelicans season is not over, but I do feel like there is more untapped potential here because they have not just Zion playing at like this really, really awesome level as he was down the home stretch of this season. You just don't often get a combination of wing play like you do from Trey and Herb, and I just think you got to go all in on that. And like even the defensive-minded dogs who are coming off the bench here, right? The Alvarados and the Dyson Daniels, like those dudes had their impacts in this game, and those dudes are quality players. And it just feels to me like you're sort of limiting yourself when you have 2 okay defenders who are like in this shot creation mold, but again, aren't the most efficient, aren't the best playmakers, aren't going to pressure the rim, aren't those high-end athletes. So that's going to be the question for them going forward, is how can they maximize this ceiling, and ultimately, can Zion stay healthy? But it was the Lakers who won, Logan. So what did you take away from them getting out of this one?
They still got one of the best starting 5s in all of basketball that I just really, really believe in, man. 2 superstars, we've talked about it a lot. LeBron, amidst one of his somehow best seasons of his career, year 21, age 39. I mentioned this the other day. Only player to shoot 71% at the rim and 40% from behind the arc. Again, that's LeBron James at age 39. Anthony Davis, the best defensive player on the planet. And they just give the Lakers such a high baseline offensively because of how often they get downhill, collapse the defense, and draw free throws. But around them, I mean, I think the guy that hasn't gotten enough credit is D'Angelo Russell. Like, he has been awesome this year. And consistent enough where when he's taking a tough jumper, he's taking an open look. It's like, I don't have these questions about D'Lo hitting it. I think it's going in. Like, I think D'Lo's just wetting it. He had an abysmal season last year, and this is arguably the best career or the best season of his career. Reeves is super reliable, and they got a jumbo-sized wing who can create for himself and has played at his best in big games. Like this starting five, LeBron, AD, Reeves, D'Lo, Hotch. I call him Hibachi Mura, man, because he can just get hot, dude.
Nice.
Like he can just turn it on. I love them. I think
that.
I think they're a great starting five, man. It's kind of with their bench where I have issues, but I just don't think their record reflects how dominant the Lakers can be and can be at their absolute best. Back against their wall, this team has been great. You shouted out Jason in our earlier segments. These are courtesy of Jason, host of Hoops Tonight here at the Volume. They've been the best clutch team in basketball. They're 24-9 in games within 5 points within 5 minutes left, and they've been 8th in clutch offensive rating. And I think specifically for their matchup against the Denver Nuggets, we're going to do a preview later this week. I just think the Lakers have a big chip on their shoulder. And not that that's going to really determine my outcome for the series. I'll spoil it. I think the Nuggets are the best team in the West. I'm going to take them to beat the Lakers.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I think this Lakers team has fought really hard in the back half of this season and has just been playing harder, more engaged, better ball. One, because they've needed to. They've had to fight and scratch and claw just to get into the play-in, but I think they've got a really big chip on their shoulders. I think the Lakers have something to prove this season and are embarrassed about how last season ended. And I think they're going to put up a real fight against Denver. Again, it's not really going to change my outlook or how I think the series is going to end, but I think they're going to fight really hard, and they have something to prove against Denver. And just looking at the starting fives, I think you're looking at two of the best in the league, man. People can clown on the Lakers for their underachievement in the regular season. I put that way more on lineup mismanagement and engagement more than anything else than I do for, how great I actually believe this team to be. I don't love their bench. I don't like that Taurean Prince and Gabe Vincent have to play good games off the bench and Jackson Hayes has to play. I hate that. If they had a better 6 through 8, maybe I have a different outlook on, the ceiling this team could have, but I really do believe in this starting five, and I think they're going to put up more of a fight this year against Denver.
Well, I will say, it's not like the bench is where Denver's going to win any games. Like, I like the Lakers bench more than I like Denver's, especially with Gabe Vincent back, dude. Like, Gabe Vincent was so good in the postseason last year, and I do think brings a specific dimension of both point-of-attack defense and shooting skill and just being like a solid playmaker that this team doesn't have a guy who checks all of those boxes. Obviously, they have, like, they're super skilled guards with D'Lo and Reeves. If Jared Vanderbilt were ever to play basketball again, then they would have like this awesome point of attack answer. But you're looking at either a defensive or an offensive liability with any of those guys. And I'm not saying that Gabe is like consistently a better option than certainly D'Lo and Reeves, just because I think their offensive advantage offsets his defensive advantage. But having a guy who can check both of those boxes like is good to have out there, and I think a valuable guy to be emerging for them and to be healthy again now as they're about to get into the playoffs. This is a good win for the Lakers. It looked for a while like they were going to roll, and then of course they didn't because Zion did his thing. But winning a game like that on this stage when neither LeBron or AD were on in terms of like their shot making, their scoring, that's a win to me. I thought LeBron was quite good in this game. I thought his playmaking was really impressive. I thought that he controlled the tempo of the game. I thought he made a number of big plays defensively, 5 stocks, 2 charges drawn, rebounded well. He just ultimately was missing his shots from the perimeter, blew a couple of layups. I did think down the stretch, the Lakers should have found more success than they did with him attacking switches because the Pels were switching everything. And so he was getting all of these small guard matchups, and he was kind of early on just passing out of those looks too soon without really getting into the teeth of the defense, without forcing everybody to sink in. So he wasn't creating a super effective advantage. And then They doubled him pretty successfully, and they forced a turnover. The Lakers' spacing wasn't the best. I thought they were going to get more like really high-quality shots off LeBron hunting those switches than they actually did. But ultimately, he did still mostly control this game when he needed to, and did enough offensively and played absolutely one of his better games defensively. AD missed a lot in this game, took some shots that I didn't love, some of those push shots. Early on, he came out aggressive, which I liked, but he was attacking Valanciunas out of the post, and it's like, hey, AD, you're quicker than Valanciunas, you're bouncier than Valanciunas, you're skilled, and you can make these touch shots. Why are you banging bodies with him out of the post when the guy's 270 pounds and has the length with a 7'6" wingspan to affect those shots? That I didn't like, but even though he wasn't his most effective scoring at all, and like the LeBron AD pick and roll that was unstoppable at the end of the regular season, and that game 82 contest just was not nearly as much of a factor in this one, he killed it on the glass. And especially when the Pelicans went small because they just couldn't really play Valanciunas, he picked up 6 offensive boards. That was big, those extra possessions. Even though it wasn't his best game defensively, he still had some really valuable moments there. Both of them got to the line, and so they were able to supplement some of their lack of shot making. So when you can win a game like that against a good team with LeBron and AD like not delivering really close to their utmost potential offensively and as scorers, that's a win. And it speaks to the fact that the role players in the starting 5 are just awesome offensively. I love Rui Hachimura, man. Maybe the take that I've been clowned on most in my life was briefly, I did a podcast. Logan, of course, we were doing Nerd Sesh at the time as well, but I did like 3 episodes with my friend Carvel. We called it the Extremely Riveting NBA Podcast. This was during COVID. And one of the 3 episodes we did was redrafting the 2019 class after their rookie years. And I think I took the Hotch 4th. And Carvel, who, by the way, is a very smart basketball guy, I value his opinion a lot. He said, you idiot. What the hell are you taking the Hotch this high for? Look at me now, buddy. The Hotch is the perfect basketball player. Multiple really smart cuts over both these Pelicans matchups. He's such a good cutter. He's an awesome spot-up shooter. He's a great mismatch attacker. Like, he's just so damn good. He's so damn good. He's huge.
I think that take made me break my chair, dude.
Because you're so astounded by the genius of it taking Hotch that high.
Just hearing the words, Hachimura is the perfect basketball player.
He is. He is. What more could you possibly want? The guy's perfect.
I just broke my chair, man.
I'm sorry to hear that, man. Well, we'll get the chair repair guy over there as fast as possible. But D'Lo and Reeves do their thing. Like, they can carry that load. And that's why I think this team is damn good. That's why I felt good about having them number 5 in my contender rankings. This is the best the Lakers offense has looked in a long, long time. This is the most offensive skill they've ever had on the floor at once, right? Having this sort of just lethal shooting alone alongside LeBron and AD, but then also the sort of ball handling and playmaking you get from D'Lo and Reeves, the mismatch attacking and physicality you do get from Rui. They're really, really good, dude. And this is the funny thing, and this is also what I've been forecasting for a couple weeks. If they drew OKC, I would have picked them. I think that's such a brutal matchup for OKC, a team that is this huge, played them really well in the regular season, 2 proven superstars against the young, slight, up-and-coming squad. It's a tough matchup. Against Minnesota, I would have thought long and hard because the Lakers just clearly have an offensive skill advantage there. They would have the 2 best players on the floor, and ultimately they do match up in terms of size and physicality with Minnesota in a way that a lot of teams don't. Denver is the one where it's like, man, it really doesn't matter how well the Lakers are playing. They are still overwhelmingly likely to lose in the first round. And we will give our full series preview on this tomorrow when we do our full playoff preview. That, to me, just isn't going to discredit that the Lakers are playing great basketball because I don't see anybody beating Denver in the West. I could see the Lakers giving them the hardest matchup. Ultimately, I don't think they have answers for that offense, right? If they have flaming hot shooting stretches, which they're capable of, this is a really good shooting team now. They can make it interesting, but ultimately, I just think Denver is comfortably the better basketball team. But against anybody else out West, like LA really might have been the pick. You could have at least made a legit case.
Well, I mean, people are probably going to clown on us and clown on the rest of NBA media if the Lakers get bounced in the first round. Oh, you hyped up LA all year long, yada, yada.
They're playing Denver, bro.
Exactly.
Anybody would get bounced in the first round versus Denver.
Exactly. I do think the Lakers provide, an interesting counter to them, and maybe might be the best team to face them out west. I mean, I really do think the Lakers are a great team and have a great starting five. I think how many games they get eliminated in is really determined by one guy, and that's LeBron. Well, AD too, because AD's variance is so every other Davis, man. But I think it's really going to come down to LeBron picking and choosing his spots, like you said. I think LeBron deliberately has to hunt like Jamal Murray and KCP and switches, and I think he has to attack. I don't think he can take his foot off the gas at all. And then defensively, I think we saw in this game too, LeBron fell asleep a lot ball watching, and it's just going to take him being locked in and engaged. Like how much can I get to 100% of LeBron? And that's really going to determine if this series goes 6 or if the Lakers get swept. And also, I don't know if you heard, man, the Lakers had like the best sweep ever last year. So
they did. They did.
We shouldn't clown on them too much. They had a great sweep last year. It was really competitive.
They had the best sweep ever. They had the best second half comeback ever in game 1. And it's funny, I mock it. There is some truth to it. Like, obviously, the Nuggets were just clearly better, right? The Nuggets were going to win that series no matter what. It was a very competitive sweep in the scope of sweeps. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say the Suns scared the Nuggets more just because they won 2 games and the Lakers didn't. Like, I actually think the Lakers played a more consistently competitive series. If Book and KD didn't go absolutely nuclear, which of course they did, but it just felt like the Lakers had more upside because of their composition as a basketball team to make that a real series, where it was like the Suns were never, ever going to get stops against the Nuggets. Like, Jokic murdered them, bro. That was one of the best offensive series that I've ever seen from a basketball player, and they had no answers for him. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. It's a really tough matchup for the Lakers for multiple reasons. I don't think that they have answers for Jokic. I don't think they have good answers for Murray. I don't think really anybody has good answers for the Nuggets offense. But we'll get there when we get there. Real quick, Logan, we don't want this episode to go on for 8 hours. So, Pels Kings now we do have for that 8 seed. What are just your gut feelings going into that game?
I'll put it very simple. Like, if Zion Williamson is healthy, I think I'm going to take New Orleans to win. If Zion Williamson is not available, I'm going to take the Kings to win.
Yeah.
I think the big key to me is very similar to Golden State. If Zion isn't out there, it's you got to stop Fox from getting downhill. I don't think McCollum is the answer, but I think the Pelicans have guys that they can throw at Sacramento. Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, I think those are good deterrents. And then it's going to be about Sabonis matching up with Valanciunas too, man. Can Valanciunas limit Sabonis? And again, I think the key guys, if the Kings are going to do some damage or make any kind of noise, Keegan and Keon have to step up every game. And I was fired up watching that game, man. Like, every big shot that Keegan hit, every big play that Keon, because the Kings are so clearly, in my opinion, or at least, outmatched, like, relative to normal expectation. It's going to take Keegan stepping up. It's going to take Keon making big plays, and they did. And just another big shout out to Keon, man. Like, that's a tough draw, dude. Drawing Steph Curry in a play-in game, and I mean, he showed up. Like, kid's a 40% three-point shooter. He was a G League guy. He was on a 2-way deal. And now he's getting playoff minutes, and he's balling out. It's going to take, to me, it's going to take those guys stepping up again against New Orleans in a 1-game format. But if Zion's healthy, I'm going to take New Orleans. If he's not healthy, I'll take Sacramento.
So I basically agree. If Zion plays, New Orleans is just better. They're more athletic. They're deeper. They have more big-time offensive creators. They have better defensive personnel. I think they probably have the best player on the floor if you get, like, aggressive Zion. Maybe not Zion playing a couple days off a hamstring injury, even if he does play. But I do really like their options to guard Fox. I mean, they have these very long, rangy, athletic wings who are also quick. They do have a big man who can bang bodies with Sabonis. I worry about Valanciunas in space, definitely, with how well the Kings have been shooting the ball. But I do think he provides a good physical counter, and on the glass, at least, and New Orleans is just more talented at the end of the day than the Kings down both Monk and Herter. If Zion doesn't play, though, then the Kings have potentially the 2 best players on the floor. BI or CJ could disprove that in a single game, but I ultimately trust Sacramento's offensive formula more with that spot-up shooting and with the shot creation that you do get from both Fox and Sabonis. So it's going to come down to if Zion plays. I still think the Pelicans can win without him, but you need a much better version of both BI and CJ McCollum than what you just got, obviously. I'm not going to lie, dude. I kind of thought you would be secretly rooting for the Warriors against the Kings. I guess it wouldn't be a secret if you came out and said it. I just feel like all you ever talk about is how much you like the Warriors, and all you ever talk about is how much the Kings suck. And Sabonis sucks, and you hate him.
It's a Sabonis thing. It's just a Sabonis thing.
You hate Sabonis.
He frustrates me. He frustrates me to no end, man.
Couldn't knock down a wide-open spot-up jumper in that past game, but outside of that, he did everything else pretty well. Also an offensive foul king, of course, as we all know. And he was in foul trouble in that game. He had 5 fouls, but ended up not really mattering. The 82-game preseason is in the books, and it's finally time for the real season. Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournament through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code NERDS only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
That's our play-in talk. Now we are going to look ahead to the playoffs. We already talked about the 4-5 matchups on our last show. You can go ahead and watch those full playoff previews. Today we're going to be talking about the 3-6 matchups. And Logan, we'll start out west. I think this is probably the most interesting series in the playoffs to me. Hot take. It feels like Dallas, LA has been the choice, and maybe it's just we've already talked about that one enough that I've kind of moved past it. But I think in terms of stylistic contrast and the specifics of the matchup, this is a really, really juicy one. Suns-Timberwolves. What's the first key that stands out to you in this one?
Man, you took the words out of my mouth. That was going to be my opener, stylistical contrast. It is so weird to see two teams that have distinct, different ways of playing their brand of winning basketball, right? Minnesota is a win first on defense, get out in transition, grind teams down, and win that way. And Phoenix is, we're going to get into the mid-range and we're just going to cook, man. We're going to light it up offensively. We're not going to miss. I don't know what to do with this series. I'm befuddled, to be frank with you, Carson. My first question is just, will the Suns just kill Minnesota in the mid-range with pull-up shooting? Like, they just got Minnesota to move defensively, like in their regular season matchups, man. I think Minnesota matches up really physically well with Phoenix, but I worry about Gobert having to defend in space. I worry about them dragging him out of the paint and making him uncomfortable. Dude, Rudy Gobert was a player worst, and every player that played in this regular season series, negative 68 in his minutes. That was worst of any player that was on the floor for Minnesota and for Phoenix. And, I mean, the Suns dominated the regular season matchups, 3-0. Now, one game was at the end of the regular season, didn't really matter. Like, Minnesota punted. It wasn't like a meaningful game for them. But they won the first two matchups, 133-115, and they won the other one 97-87. The real question is, does Phoenix have the two best offensive players in this series? Are Kevin Durant and Devin Booker just going to...
Is that a question?
Well,
I don't think that's the question.
I think
the question is that enough to swing it?
I mean, I think it depends on what you think of Anthony Edwards. I think they are the two best offensive players in the series. And, I mean, we saw it against Denver, right? I think Denver's a really good comparison for how Minnesota matches up. Now, I think Minnesota's a better defense than Denver, but in terms of size and physicality, like, KD and D-Book just decided they weren't going to miss for a couple of games, and they sold 2 games from Denver. And if they do that against Minnesota, it's like, is that enough? Because there is a world in which I see Minnesota's offense grinding to a standstill, where Anthony Edwards has to settle or does settle, because that's still a bad tendency of Anthony Edwards. I don't think anybody on Phoenix can hold Ant. I think Ant is going to be able to get downhill at will if he wants. And so my thing is, how consistently does Anthony Edwards want to get to the rack, and how much does he weaponize his playmaking in this matchup to kill Phoenix? Because in the regular season matchups, when Ant wanted to get to the rim, he did. It was just a matter of was he making his layups and was he going to kick out? He didn't kick out a whole lot. And two, he settled for a lot of pull-up J's where I'm like, Ant, stop. So how much is Ant going to knock down his pull-up jumper? How much is he going to decide to take his pull-up jumper? How much is he going to kick out? I mean, I guess that's the question that I'm getting at is, can Anthony Edwards be the superstar, superhuman offensive engine that the Minnesota Timberwolves need him to be? To me, this is going to be a star-breaking or a star-breaking performance. And I just mean that in terms of how the media is going to take. I know what Anthony Edwards is. I know what I believe in Anthony Edwards to be. I know what I think he's going to be in the future. I think Anthony Edwards is going to be one of the handful of the best players on planet Earth. But because this is his first time on a big stage where the Timberwolves really achieved highly in the regular season, he is the face of the franchise. For Paolo Banchero, he's in the same boat with Orlando, right? This is going to decide his narrative. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There's a lot of first-time stars on the big stage. This is going to determine the narrative for Ant moving forward. And his play is probably going to swing, offensively going to swing what Minnesota can do. And on the other side, Phoenix has good options. Like, if they stick KD on him, KD's a long defender where, he can try to stay in front of him. I don't think anybody can. But it's going to be about trying to force him to settle for those pull-up jumpers and trying to deter him. It's also about Cat pulling his weight offensively. But that's the biggest key to me, man, is what Anthony Edwards does offensively and how he decides to play his game. Again, I think the best version of Ant in this series is one that relentlessly is attacking downhill, trying to draw fouls, trying to take shots at the rim, and kicking out. Ant commands a lot of attention, and there is enough requisite shooting on the wings where I think he can punish a bad Phoenix defense. Ant's got a lot on his shoulders in this series, but I believe in the kid.
Of course, Ant has been on this stage before, and he's performed really well, but he's never been in a moment like this where you're expected to win. And so that's a different dynamic. I don't think Phoenix has a guy who can stay in front of Ant. KD, to me, yes, of course he has the length, but I just don't think he has the quickness. I also think, Ant just physically can overpower him on some drives, but I think more often he's just going to get by him if that's the primary matchup. And I also think the more that you can pull KD out and not have him be involved as a helper, that's a net positive for the Timberwolves offense as well. To me, Royce O'Neal is the best option on this roster just because he has the build as a compact point of attack defender who can match Ant's strength as a driver, but he can't quite match the quickness. So I think Ant is a really problematic matchup for the Suns, and I do think he has an opportunity to pressure the hell out of the rim. I also think he has to play make well. That is what is going to be most tested for Ant in this series because Phoenix is going to make him beat them like that. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a bunch of traps or whatnot, but it's going to be helping aggressively on Anthony Edwards' drives, and he just has to be able to make the necessary passes to create good offense for his team when they converge, and Minnesota does have good enough shooting to hold them to account. So I absolutely think the level that he can rise to is essential because Phoenix does have the two best offensive players in this series, but Minnesota has the best athlete. They have the guy who can impose himself physically on the game in a way that those other two cannot. And ultimately, it's going to be a question of how much can Minnesota slow Phoenix down, and then how much can Minnesota leverage their physical advantages offensively to produce enough there to ultimately win out. And that's where I think Cat is the most important player in this series. Ant, obviously, just as the Timberwolves offensive number one, a team that is sort of fighting an uphill battle in terms of offensive skill is extremely important. But Cat is the guy who, on both sides of the ball, is absolutely essential in this series because offensively, he is always going to be working with a physical advantage. The Suns have nobody who can physically match up and guard him because obviously Nurk is going to be on Gobert, and even if Nurk were on him, he couldn't really step out there in space. Cat's a 40+% high volume 3-point shooter. And we've sort of seen multiple versions of Cat across the two regular season matchups that he did take place in this year between these two teams. They met in November, he came out super aggressive, and they just straight up could not deal with his combination of size, strength, and skill. He was getting what he wanted. In their recent game, their game in the last day of the regular season, he was settling more for tough runners. He was turning the ball over. You just can't have that version of Cat. You need good Cat. And specifically, I want to see him fighting for position on the interior and attacking as a post-up player, back to the basket and face-ups, but getting that position early, because too often Cat, when he initiates from the perimeter, just gets caught up on these drives and he'll commit an offensive foul, or he'll pick up his dribble too soon and he'll take a tough runner. Like, I want him in the teeth of the defense when he catches the ball, because that's where I think they just won't have answers for him. And maybe that's not the best for spacing because you have both him and Gobert down there, but I trust Cat's passing enough, his interior passing, his ability to kick out to shooters, to where I just think put yourself in the best position to impose yourself physically. And I do think he has to play make well in this series too, and the Timberwolves have to knock down shots. When Cat has been doubled on post-ups this year, the Timberwolves have averaged 0.67 points per post-up. That is absolutely awful. That's 7th percentile. But historically, that has not been the case, and I don't think that's a Cat playmaking issue. He's not perfect there. He can get overwhelmed at times, but mostly he makes the right decision. He's a pretty good passing big, and over the years, like, they've generally produced at the same level when he passes out of those double teams as when you just deal with him in single coverage. So he is vital offensively. I also think he has an opportunity to attack the glass, but he just has to bully Phoenix. He has to bully Phoenix, and he has to make them pay for the fact consistently that they are basically compromising size for this tremendous offensive skill that they have. And that's where defensively he is going to be a target consistently. Minnesota has an amazing defense. We've raved about it. But against a team like Phoenix that is so perimeter skill-based, has so many great pull-up shooters and shooters off the catch, they are going to target the fact that Minnesota is going to have two bigs on the floor basically at all times, and especially going to target Cat in space. So he has to guard a number of really dangerous offensive players out there, and primarily that's probably going to be Grayson Allen. That is not ideal. Like, he's not the same threat off the bounce that the other guys are, of course, but he's a 46% three-point shooter, and chasing him around screens, dealing with these guard-on-guard screens where then he has to hedge because you can't allow a good pull-up look to whoever it is, Devin Booker running the pick and roll, and then he's got to quickly recover to Grayson Allen. I thought he did an okay job of that, but it's just a big burden, and he's a little bit lumbering in space, and you're asking a lot of him to be consistently dialed in there, because I think Phoenix is going to make him work on that side of the ball. And I think his key objective has to be basically run these dudes off the three-point line, especially Grayson Allen, just because he's not the same threat as like a mid-range pull-up shooter, just as a ball handler overall. Run him off the three-point line, because ultimately it's not like you're going to get a lot of perfect Cat closeouts and then he stays on him perfectly in space, right? He just doesn't have that sort of quickness and agility. Take away the 46% three-point shooter, funnel him into Rudy Gobert. That, to me, is a really important job for Cat in this series. And I don't know if we'll see at some point, like, him matched up with Nurk, and then you put Gobert on a perimeter player just so you can't expose Cat in that same way. I think ultimately you need Gobert as your primary rim protector and interior defender, and that's the combination. But Cat has to hang in defensively. He has to play his ass off. Like, he just has to consistently be super high effort there in space, and then he has to give them back more than he's giving up, because he's going to give up points in space. That's part of what makes this matchup so scary for Minnesota, is that lethal perimeter skill against a too big look. But I ultimately think Cat really can bully the Suns. He can bully the Suns. He has a bunch of favorable matchups, and I think he does have the ability to give them back more than he's giving up.
Yeah, I think Cat and Gobert are just both interesting defenders to look at in general here in this matchup, man. I mean, even like with Nurk, high pick and roll, like, they're just so different. They're just such different basketball teams. And ironically, like, Nurk matches up well, I think, with Gobert on the interior.
Interesting.
I mean,
know that I totally agree.
I'm just talking about on the glass and, like, in terms of size. Like, I think he can move Rudy around.
Offensively or defensively?
I mean, just on the glass, like they're just huge. Like Nurk's just a big body where I think he can
Definitely
push
can
Gobert
match up on the
around.
glass. I think Gobert has a pretty clear opportunity to expose his lack of verticality, and that's where I think you saw him have a lot of success in this last
But
matchup. Ant gets penetration, you go over the top to Gobert. Like Nurk just can't quite contest those.
yeah, I'm trying to get those guys involved in as many actions as possible on ball, and I'm trying to keep Ant and
You're including
McDaniels.
Gobert in that?
Yeah, I mean, I want those guys in space. I want to get Gobert and Cat in space, and after that, it's like we'll figure out the rest. Like I want the and that's what Phoenix was really good at doing is getting Minnesota in rotation and getting Minnesota out of sorts defensively. Like I'm just trying to get away from McDaniels and Ant as much as possible on the perimeter and attacking both of those guys with KD, with Beal. Um, but it is a real stylistical contrast. And the interesting thing about Phoenix, as always, is you live by the pull up jumper, you die by the pull up jumper. And that's what's so interesting about this series, too, is Minnesota could play a perfect series and they could be red hot from the mid range, and the Suns could walk them off the court. Or the Timberwolves could have a bad defensive series, but the Suns' mid range and pull up jumpers leave them. And somehow the Timberwolves eke it out. There's a lot of different ways I could see this series going. The thing that still scares me about Phoenix is I've harped on many a time the reason that they were not on my top 10 contenders list. We discussed this on Jason's show as well when we disagreed about the ceiling for the Suns and the Timberwolves. Suns have been bad all year long in the fourth quarter and in big moments. I read off these stats on Jason's show. They have a offensive rating of 104.1 in the fourth quarter. That is dead last among all NBA teams. They have a defensive rating of 116.6. That's 22nd among NBA teams. They have the worst net rating among all NBA teams in the fourth quarter, negative 12.5. And they have the second worst turnover percentage, 16.2. Clutch offense, 23rd. Clutch net rating, 19th. Like, in the big moments, I know they've got the personnel. KD, D-Book, Beal. They have been a bad fourth quarter and clutch team. And I think that's due to a couple reasons. I think it's, one, just the hierarchy thing. Again, there's just moments where the role players try to do too much. Allen, Eric Gordon. I think there's also, like, not a star hierarchy, like, where it's like, and they're not super cohesive. Like, it's like, oh, KD's going to take this possession. Beal's going to take this possession. Book's going to take this possession. It's not like all of the pieces working together and moving off ball or finding an open shot. It's like, all right, hey, Book, this is your isolation possession. KD, this is your isolation possession. Let's figure it out. And then, two, I think it speaks to there's not a good defense. They're not good at stopping runs. And so it's hard to stop the bleeding sometimes if you're Phoenix. That's what scared me off of Phoenix. And that's honestly what scares me off of them in this matchup, man. I went back and forth with this one, and again, I think there's a wide range of outcomes in this series. I like Minnesota's formula more. I think Anthony Edwards is going to be able to consistently get downhill. I think his pull-up jumper has to be going. I think he has to play make well, but he's a gamer, and I trust him. I think Karl Anthony Towns, like you said, has to pull his weight. But the T-Wolves have more players that I like. I prefer their recipe, their win first on defense approach, and I think they're super big and physical, and they can make Phoenix a little uncomfortable. So I'm going to take the Timberwolves in 7.
The clutch execution point is obviously a fair one about Phoenix because they have been awful there. The thing is, Minnesota has also been a really bad clutch team. They're 27th in clutch net rating, and we have seen some of the issues just in terms of their lack of that like automatic half-court shot creator bog them down in those spots. So I don't know that that's as much of a needle mover for me in this matchup as it might be with Phoenix against some other team. Like, ultimately, your process can be bad. I still might just rather have the guys who can get me a great shot in those spots. And I do think there's some problems that Phoenix poses as a matchup with Minnesota here. First of all, Phoenix swept the regular season series. When Cat played, they won both games in blowouts. Now, they also shot 55% from three in both of those games. And the Game 82 matchup was just like so weird. The T-Wolves turned the ball over 24 times. And there were some dumb ones too where you're just like, what happened here? Like, Naz Reid is cutting baseline and he steps out of bounds and like a ball that is deflected off of two Suns just hits him when he's standing out of bounds. Like every single bounce went Phoenix's way. That was a weird game, but you did see that it is a scary matchup because of how much they demand Cat to guard in space, because of the fact that even though I think Gobert's ability to guard in space is often misunderstood, what I think is true is that the teams that are best built to counter Gobert are the teams that can kill you without having to challenge him at the rim. It's not that he can't guard in space. He guards well in space. It's that if you are pulling him out into space, you are taking away what he does best, which is being this all-time great rim protector. Or if you can just avoid having to challenge him at the rim because you're like the best pull-up shooting team from mid-range and beyond the arc in the league, well, that's a good counter to him as well. And like those are the realities for the Suns. They have big-time shot makers who, by design, like don't pressure the rim super effectively. They drive and kick well, but they can kill you with those 10 to 15 footers as much as anybody out there. I also think Bradley Beal is a real problem. Like the fact that the Suns are going to have the two best offensive players on the floor, probably to me, like that's a big factor. It's rare that I pick against a team in a series when they have that factor. But his quickness is also a unique challenge here. And the Timberwolves are like built to guard basically everybody in the league because they have elite rim protector. They're huge. They have two awesome point of attack defenders. Nobody is built to guard a team that has three awesome perimeter players, like 3-star perimeter players. And that's where it's like Conley on Bradley Beal is not ideal. There is just a quickness advantage there. And you saw that Beal exploded in the last game that they played. And so I wonder how important Nickeil Alexander-Walker becomes just because he is that awesome point of attack defender and really good shooter, solid playmaker. But you are losing then one of your best half-court creators offensively and a guy who just very much like sets the tone. And in these playoff environments too, I want just as like a guy to control the pace, right? To make good decisions because I don't want Ant being like the only perimeter decision maker. That's a crazy burden on him. So those are the concerns for me and why I think this is going to be a hell of a series because I don't think Phoenix is as good of a basketball team as Minnesota, but they have such a clear offensive skill advantage. And they're just kind of built to attack this defense pretty effectively, this defense that has a whole lot of answers for just about everybody. That being said, I do still think this is a really, really good Minnesota defense, and I don't want to overlook the fact that these are the best matchups that Cat and honestly, I would say Ant too can like reasonably expect in the playoff field. I think both those guys have the potential to explode. I think Gobert also, as I mentioned, over the top. And whenever Nurk is not on the floor, he can bully whoever is at the 5. And we saw that. This is something that I tweeted about last week. Gobert, historically, like against the Clippers, for example, that team could go 5 out and he just wasn't physical and aggressive enough out of the post to even punish them with his offense. He has been much more effective as a post-up player this year. And it's not because of skill. It's just because it's like when he has those mismatches, he's actually going at them and he's being physical. And so he's been an efficient post-up player and he's posting up way more. So in those non-Nurk minutes, he's going to have real physical advantages. And I'm going to bank on that. I'm going to bank on that with Minnesota having home court, having more quality players. Like it requires Ant and Cat both delivering probably. And ultimately, Ant, although he has stepped up to these moments, just like isn't the most proven half-court decision maker compared to some of these other guys. And his pull-up shooting can go red hot, but he was one of like the handful of least efficient volume pull-up shooters in the league. Cat, you just kind of never know, man. You just kind of never know what version of Cat you're going to get. But even though these regular season matchups like strongly favored the Suns, I really think that physicality advantage, just the fact that like the stars for the Timberwolves are so much bigger and they have these physical advantages, I'm going to bet on them grinding out enough offense and succeeding there much more than we're used to seeing this Minnesota team succeed. So I'm taking them in 7. I'm conflicted about it. I don't think they have the best answers for Phoenix defensively, especially compared to the answers that they have for basically everybody else defensively. I also don't think that Phoenix has answers for Minnesota, and I think Minnesota has an opportunity for a rarely good offensive series for them. So I'm going T-Wolves in 7. What's your official pick here?
Yeah, I said it. I'm kind of surprised we agree. Timberwolves in 7.
Okay, there we go. You didn't think we would agree? Did you think I was going to take the Suns, or did you think...
I did think you were going to take Phoenix. I say that as I'm wearing a
I know.
play-in shirt.
Dude, I really thought about it, man. It's scary. Like, I can see certainly a world in which Minnesota just doesn't produce good enough offense in the half court, and Cat's shot making is off, and then it's like Book and KD are gonna get theirs, and Beal is a problematic matchup.
I'm going to ask you one more thing, and then we'll move on to the next series. I agree that I think Anthony Edwards and Cat pulling their weight is probably the biggest question mark offensively. This has been something that I know a lot of NBA fans have said too. Is there any way in which like you think Gobert could get played off the court in this matchup?
No, not at all. The Suns, to me, can play like their small ball configuration in stretches with KD at the 5, and it's pretty lethal offensively. But I think you're getting punished on the other side. Like, I think Gobert is able to go over the top consistently against those looks. And also, like I said, like, he will get down to the post and he will get dirtier than previously has been willing to. And also, Cat is going to be a problem there. And for the most part, the Suns just have to play Nurk. Like, they just don't have another good 5. And you're not playing KD at the 5 for 25 minutes a night, right? You're doing that for maybe 8-10 minutes a night, and you're trying to catch them off guard with a different look and get a run going with your offense. Gobert's not getting played off the floor in this series. I think people misunderstand his defensive skill set. What I've realized, I came to this realization today actually, people think that Rudy Gobert is Brook Lopez defensively. Like they do. People think that he is literally just sit and drop, protect the rim. That's all he can do. You get him in space, and it's, oh my God, look at this guy. He's going to fall over his own legs and trip, and ha ha ha. We'll all point at him and laugh. And it's like, he's just not. The reason that you could go small against Utah back in the day was because he wouldn't punish you with his offense. And their defensive issues were really all about the fact that they were just bad at the point of attack. Everybody around him was bad. I'm not the biggest Gobert guy. I'm definitely not, but I do think his defense is what gets overly criticized. Like, the guy's a pretty awesome defender. I would take Anthony Davis over him, but Rudy is all-time rim protector who also guards well in space. Like, he's one of the best defenders that we've ever seen. All right, let's talk about Brook Lopez, though, Logan, because he's going to have to carry his weight. Pacers-Bucks. Very, very interesting matchup. The unfortunate news, of course, is that Giannis is going to miss at least the start of this series, it looks like, with the calf injury, which he sustained, I believe, 8 days ago. And so we don't have an exact timeline on that, but it doesn't seem like he's going to play early in this series. First of all, just how does that affect your outlook here?
I mean, it's the biggest swing factor in this series. Yeah. Giannis dominated the regular season matchup. 42 points, 13 boards, 5 assists a night on 68% from the field. But the Pacers won the regular season series 4-1. The interesting thing about that to me, Carson, is, we're concerned about Giannis. One, the big questions: when does he return? What game does he come back? Point blank, period. Two, how close to 100% is he? Those are big swing factors. But Indiana has an interesting question on the other side of the ball, too, and it's like, what version of Tyrese Halliburton do we get? Post All-Star break, they're 16-10 with Halliburton. He's been out there, but he's just 17 points, 4 boards, and 10 assists a night on 45, 30, 86 splits. That's 30% from behind the arc. And considering Giannis' injury, considering the regular season matchup, like if I could guarantee that Halliburton was at 100%, I might take them to win this series. But that's a big swing to me. Like, if Halliburton isn't, 25 a night while giving me those 10 assists a night and just flame throwing behind the arc, I don't really know how I could bet on Indiana. But if you also think Giannis isn't at 100%, it's an interesting dynamic. And on the other end, it's like, can Damian Lillard and Chris Middleton completely carry the offensive load? It's an interesting dynamic, man. It's weird because, it's injuries and what versions of these stars do we get? To me, those are really the big factors in this series.
So the Hallie thing is obviously key because he has not been playing at the level that he was before he had his hamstring injury, when it was like, okay, this guy's clearly a top 15 player. He was destroying everybody, leading by far the number one offense before they had Siakam. But I think the Bucks have a really, really hard time with Tyrese Halliburton. In all of their regular season meetings this year, like, it was just totally apparent that they had no answers. They're way too weak at the point of attack, and there's so much shooting alongside him. And even though Hallie hasn't been the same guy, Indiana still is the number 2 offense in the league post All-Star game. Like, they are still lethal out there. And it's really just a question of personnel and coverage. Like, the Bucks are built to play drop, and also they just don't have good perimeter defenders, right? And Brook is going to get absolutely toasted in drop coverage by Hallie, who, even though he's been taking tougher pull-up looks, like, he's going to get good pull-up looks. He is still one of the best pull-up shooters in basketball. He's also one of the best passers in basketball, playing with a pick-and-pop big like Miles Turner. Like, they're just going to concede so many great looks if Brook just sits and drop, but he can't do anything else. He can't switch. And so then you're blitzing Tyrese Halliburton. I wouldn't blitz Tyrese Halliburton, man. Like, especially when he hasn't been quite as quick, as explosive post-injury. Like, you're going to let him dissect you as a passer with an advantage? That is just a recipe to getting absolutely barbecued. And he is such a great decision maker so consistently. And so that's where I think, like, Giannis is really important defensively in this matchup, because they would put him on Miles Turner in stretches so that Hallie wouldn't just straight up target Brook Lopez with that pick and pop, and he and Turner can get to their 2-man game. Instead, it's Giannis guarding those actions. But now you don't have Giannis there, and you can have Bobby Portis do that, and you can put Brook on Siakam. But then I think that you're still targeting Brook out of pick and roll with Hallie and Siakam, and I think that would be really effective. So I just do not like this matchup defensively for the Bucks. They are slow. They are built to play basically exclusively drop. If you want to have like their one legit rim protector out there on the floor, they're not built to guard a team, especially without Giannis, that plays as fast as Indiana, that has as much shooting as Indiana. I also think Siakam has just been so good offensively in Indiana, and he can kind of destroy them, especially if you're talking about hunting the weakest defenders on the floor. Like, inverted pick and roll with Hallie, I think, is very problematic for Milwaukee to cover, because then you have obviously the issue of, okay, well, let's say that we are guarding Siakam with Brook, whoever we're guarding him with, they're going to hedge on those actions. We're going to allow Tyrese Halliburton to just barbecue us with his spot up shooting, or we're going to switch those actions, and then Siakam is going to work on one of our guards who we know are just not very good defensively. I think whenever he gets a switch on a post-up, he's been so effective. I just think they're going to struggle to find the answer for, like, who is big and quick enough to guard Pascal Siakam, because Brook, it's like, okay, he can give him the runway and he's huge, but I still think Siakam will be able to get a step a good amount. I still think Siakam is a good enough mid-range shooter to hold him accountable. So I just don't see the Bucks getting stops, like, especially without Giannis out there. And my real concern is Giannis misses the first 2 games. Indiana just absolutely lights them up offensively, and that's kind of series over right there.
Well, I mean, in that scenario, you don't really have any margin for error. You've already dropped the first 2 at home, and then it's like,
yeah,
you need to rattle off 4 straight wins and just slam the door on Indiana, which, even when Giannis dominated, that's the thing. They didn't win. It didn't matter. Like, I mean, I think you hit a key too. It's the up tempo. Like, that's what's so interesting about both of these series is, like, yeah, the Bucks are a great team. Yeah, Minnesota's a great team, but does the other team that they're facing have the perfect recipe to mess them up? Indiana's up tempo style of play plays directly against Milwaukee's roster because they have such plodding older players, and I don't know, man. I mean, if they let Hallie get into the teeth of the defense, you're right, dude. I just don't know how Milwaukee consistently slows them down in this series. Man, you got me rethinking my decision, man.
Dude, like, here's the question. How long can Brook Lopez play? Like, genuinely. I just think he is going to get relentlessly targeted, and this is the worst matchup for him.
And he's like, he could legitimately be a 0 in this series, too, if his jumper isn't hitting. Like, that's all Brook is at this point, is screen, pop.
Yeah, or you'll see him right in certain spots where it's like, oh, teams go small, and guess what? Hey, remember when Brook Lopez used to score 20 points per game as a post-up player? He can do that. You're not doing that against Miles Turner. You're not going to have those sort of physical advantages.
Man, dude, this would just be like unprecedented. I feel like I don't know, the Bucks getting it just feels so like on like just probability wise, it just seems really unlikely that they would. I don't know.
Here's my thing.
I have a hard time imagining like they get bounced by Miami in really ugly fashion, then they get bounced by Indiana in really ugly fashion.
Well, with Giannis dealing with
I don't know.
injuries in both
They do
those
have,
series.
and they do have Doc Rivers, man. I don't know.
They do have Doc Rivers. And the regular season matchups between these teams are interesting because the Pacers did own them, even though they have no answer for Giannis. I think Giannis will eat in this series when he plays. But even with Giannis out there, like they just have a really, really hard time getting any stops against this Indiana team, which is such a great offense. And we haven't even seen them have to deal with the Siakam problem. I think Giannis on Siakam is a pretty good option when he is out there and healthy. But that's my concern. It's just like Giannis sits out game one, we can say is pretty much a given. I just think Indiana takes that. Milwaukee's been a good home team, but that is going to be a battle of who can create the more consistent offense. And there's just no question to me that it's Indiana. Indiana is the team with like the guy who's been by far the best offensive player. They're the team with also the proven second consistent star. They're the team with all the shooting around. They're the team that is much quicker, that plays much faster. Like Dame is going to have to do so much when Giannis isn't on the floor, and dealing with him is still going to be tough for Indiana. That's the thing. Indiana's not a good defense. Milwaukee isn't a very good defense. Indiana's 24th in defensive rating. We all know Rick Carlisle wouldn't date his own team because they can't get any stops. And we all understand that. And Bruce Brown took on a decent portion of the Dame responsibility, and you don't have him anymore. He's in Toronto, of course. Nembhard is a solid option, but I still think this is a good matchup for Dame to potentially go off. But he just hasn't consistently shown that he can rise to the level that is necessary. He's still a very good offensive player, but you don't have other athletes on the floor. I just think things get so stagnant when Giannis isn't out there, and it's Middleton tough jumpers, and it's Brook repetitive pick and pop threes. Indiana's fluid. They have more weapons. They're going to just get those easy looks in transition so much more. And so that's what it comes down to for me. It's I don't think Giannis plays early in this series. And straight up, I think Indiana is a good bit better than Milwaukee without Giannis. I do not think Milwaukee without Giannis is a good basketball team. I do not think you can identify what they do well. What do they do well? They are poor in terms of point of attack defense. They have one good straight up rim protector, but who is totally exploitable in space. They lose the additional rim protection and rebounding on the interior that you get from Giannis. Now they have one high-end half-court shot creator in Dame who has regressed a good bit, and everybody around him is, again, a non-threat athletically. Indiana's just better than that team. And so when Giannis is on the floor, of course, if I expected Giannis to play every single game, I would still pick Milwaukee. But if he gets back out there and they're down 2-0 or they're down 2-1, I don't think the gap is big enough because I still don't like their defensive formula. Then I would think Giannis is just going to will his way to a lot of offensive success and dominate in that game. And then it's the best player on the floor quotient is probably just what you need. But I don't know, man. I don't like what we're seeing with this injury and the exact timeline. I'm taking Indiana in 6. I think they pull off the upset.
Ooh-wee. I like it.
I think you got to get it done in 5 or 6. It's going to be stealing games on the road. It's going to be how many of these games can we win before Giannis is on the floor? If you get to a game 7, obviously Giannis is going to be playing at that point. If the Bucks lose the first 2 games, I think Giannis will just force his way back out there. I can't imagine him missing more than 2 games under those circumstances. So if it's a game 7 in Milwaukee with Giannis on the floor, I'm taking the Bucks, absolutely. But I just do not like their formula without him for any number of games.
I like it. I like the take, man.
Yeah.
I can't pick against Milwaukee. I think Dame steps up and does his thing. I think, like you said, I think this is a favorable matchup. And it sucks because I don't think either team has an answer for the opposing team's initiator. Halliburton hasn't been his absolute best. Now he's got Siakam to lean on.
And that's the other thing, Logan, in this specific matchup. Again, Hallie doesn't have to create much penetration. He doesn't have to get a step as much. He's just going to be fed a runway of opportunity to kill you with touch shot making, to kill you with pull-up shooting, to kill you with playmaking. I agree, neither team is like built to stop the other, but it's a top 2 offense against an offense that without Giannis has just been pretty average. Like when Dame plays without Giannis, they have a 114 offensive rating. They're just okay.
You're talking me into it, man, and I want to.
It's crazy. But the thing is, if Giannis is healthy, it's like obviously this is all different.
The final point that makes me want to take Indiana is the fact that I wrote down Bucks in 7 to peek behind the curtain. That was my pick. I'm also betting on a Doc Rivers-led team to win a Game 7, and I have been the Bucks detractor all season long. I have written them off so many times, and yet here I am talking myself back into Milwaukee. The logical part of my brain is saying take Indiana, but I can't do it. I'm gonna take Milwaukee in 7, but to be upfront with you, like this is probably my least confident playoff pick in the field, man. I don't know what to do with this series.
I get it, dude. Those were like the 2 outcomes for me. It's basically you survive the Giannis absence, right? You steal 1 of 2 home games or whatever, and then he's going to play in the second half of this series. I'm just confident about that. And then with Giannis on the floor, you're the better team. But good God, dude. When I just really sat down and thought, like, how do I think 2 games without Giannis goes for the Bucks? I thought the Pacers are going to just like kind of mop the floor with them. Like I legitimately think that. I just think they're a better basketball team. Giannis covers up so many holes on this team. Covers up so many holes with his rim pressure, with his athleticism defensively, with his rebounding, with how he pushes in transition, with his playmaking. Like you take Giannis away and it's like, oh boy, we got a bunch of old, slow non-athletes who can't defend. They're just not good without him. They're not.
Man. I'm going to crossroads,
and yet still,
dude.
If they could survive this series and then you have Giannis for like the full second round, then I would take the Bucks to the conference finals. With Giannis, I think they're still the team that will be in the Eastern Conference Finals alongside Boston. But without him, I don't like them.
I don't blame you for that. I'm expecting big things from Damian Lillard in this series, man. I think this is I think it's a prove-it series for him, man. And we've seen games. That's the thing, man. I don't know what.
Sure have.
We've seen games where without Giannis, Dame has just said, you know what, man, I'm going to get downhill. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to dominate this game, and I'm going to take over. That's kind of where I lean, man. I think Dame is going to be closer to that. I think Middleton's going to be on. I think this is a really competitive series. And, man, I cannot believe I'm betting on Doc Rivers. That is my biggest issue with this. Give me the Bucks in 7. Ugh.
Dame still has the potential to go nuclear. Absolutely. But as we talked about, he has lost a step in terms of his ability to pressure the rim. And it's just like, man, how many times can I say lack of athleticism in one segment?
Yeah.
But it's true. It's just like, dude, when you don't have a vertical threat, like everything is just slow and stagnant and repetitive. And that is the reality for the Bucks. They have to be so damn good as shot makers. And I'm not saying it's impossible because they're going to have a lot of dudes on the floor who can shoot. I mean, especially without Giannis, like that's the one net positive. Right now you are playing 5 dudes who can legitimately shoot, but I worry about 2 bigs guarding Indiana. I worry about them guarding Indiana, period. And I don't know, it's like, is there a potential hero hiding somewhere for Milwaukee in this series? Like, I really like AJ Green. I'd like to see him play. I think he can swing games with his shooting. He defends hard. Don't laugh at AJ Green. AJ Green is good.
Dude, if
you don't want him to be your hero, yeah.
If you had said Malik Beasley, I would have cracked up, man. The Bucks' options aren't great, dude.
No, they aren't.
Maybe Bobby Portis goes dummy. I don't know, man.
Maybe, but I think that he's so good at like bullying the little guys.
There's not really those guys to attack in this matchup.
The Pacers are big in the front court. Like, they're big. Now, again, Giannis has gone through them like tissue paper, and I don't think that Siakam really changes that. I love Aaron Nesmith, but he's just too small for Giannis. But I don't want to sound like a broken record. I just think Giannis comes back midway through this series, and in the home stretch, that makes the Bucks the slightly better team. But I think they're going to dig a hole because I think the Pacers are way better than them without Giannis, and that's ultimately why I'm picking the upset here.
Man, Milwaukee's going to have some big questions to answer if that's the way they go out, man.
Oh, yeah, man. That would also just suck for Giannis to have, like, back-to-back postseasons affected by injury like that, cut short.
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen. Like, I would like to see Giannis out there as healthy as possible. I want to see one of the, in my opinion, two, I think basically everybody would agree, three best players on the planet out there for a playoff run. But I think it'll also show you how valuable he is when we take a good hard look at how the Bucks look without him. So going bold in this one, I'm taking Indiana. Real quick before we get out of here, Logan, let's hit on this Jontay Porter story just because it's a big one. He has been dealt a lifetime ban from the league for betting on his own games, for giving inside information to bettors who then placed very large wagers, for apparently limiting his involvement in at least one game. It's confirmed. Like, that was the whole story at first, right? Oh, well, his eye hurts or his stomach hurts. He was leaving these games with very weird reasons. That has seemingly been confirmed. Betting against the Raptors in a game, like, as bad as things could possibly go in a player betting scandal, this is it. He makes Calvin Ridley look like child's play. Like, that's even an understatement, dude. It's like, you know, the Civil War versus playing with toy soldiers with your friends. You know what I mean? Anyways, what's your take on this?
What a dumbass. I mean, I don't have to dress it up, dude. They apparently said his winnings were like $22,000. And also, how do you expect people, like, why do you think people were dumb enough to, like, not connect the dots here? One, you have to verify who you are. So if you're doing it under your own name, they're going to have all your information on background.
Well, he did it through an associate.
Okay. Well, two, to my second point, when you have that much money coming in and out, if you're gambling, that's going to raise flags. People at the sportsbook are going to go, hey, man, that's a big-ass bet. And, oh, my God, you took all of Jontay Porter's under props from one game? Like, dude, my friends and I were talking, if you were going to do this, and I wonder if Jontay isn't the only one, there is a smarter way of going about this and doing it. You pick your spots, man. You're sporadic with it. You take your under this game. You take your under
Logan's
this.
Giving them a clinic. Logan's
I'm just
teaching
saying,
them how to do it.
If you're going to do it, man, you don't do it all at once. It's like that's going to raise a bunch of flags. And then my third point, hey, man, if the NBA is going to crack down and give an indefinite ban, let's take this to Congress and let's get all the government people who do insider trading, let's give them like lifetime bans too, man. Let's really get the money trail going. Jontay Porter will be the first domino to fall. We're taking everybody to court, man. Jontay, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, man. Sacrificing your profession and your NBA career to wager on games has to be the dumbest mess I've ever heard, dude. I don't really feel bad for Jontay either. I mean,
not at all.
Sacrificing the integrity of the game, that's all we got, man. And I don't, like I said, man, I don't think Jontay is the only one, but I do think he's the dumbest one.
He's definitely dumb, and I feel no sympathy for Jontay Porter because there are situations in the world in which, like, people participating in professional sports rig their own events and bet against themselves. I think about it happening in like lower level professional tennis, like on the Challenger Tour, where you have these guys who are ranked somewhere in the hundreds and they're really not making that much money, and it's legitimately financially viable for them to bet against themselves, and people get caught for it, but it's more understandable. Jontay Porter, right, has still made multiple millions of dollars in the NBA. Of course, he's getting paid as little as an NBA player can. He's also got a brother who's signed a $200 million contract. Like, there's just no financial justification to where I would feel sympathy for you. And you have to crack down as hard on this as possible. Some people are like, lifetime ban? Oh, come on. Come on. What? Because he placed some bets? Come on. No, dude. Like, this is the reality. Once you have integrated legal sports betting into the sports world, you cannot allow any of this. Calvin Ridley got suspended a year. He didn't bet on any of his own games at all. I'm still okay with this. If you are legitimately like tanking your own results, if you can't call it point shaving. He's Jontay Porter. It doesn't even really matter, but whatever. He's betting on his own unders, right? He's telling people to bet on his own unders. Like, that threatens the legitimacy of the sport. And there is no player who is worth preserving like their opportunity to return to the league when you consider how significant a damage to the league that can be. So that's it. I feel no sympathy for him. I think a lifetime ban is not only like justified, it is the only acceptable approach. You cannot let him back in the league. And people say, oh, they're only doing that because he's a nobody. They wouldn't do that for a star. Well, first of all, I don't think a star would ever do this. A star would never be financially incentivized. This isn't the Black Sox we're talking about here, folks. Like, these guys get paid tens and tens of millions of dollars when they're really good. And even Jontay Porter, it was a terrible financial decision, right? If he makes 20-something thousand dollars, that's such a fraction of his base contract, and now he'll never get another one of those again. It's stupid that he did this. I am glad that the league was very harsh and decisive about it, because there is no place for any leniency when you are talking about people betting on their own games and betting against themselves. That is the most dangerous thing that can happen to the legitimacy of professional sports. You cut that off the moment there is any of it.
Couple of follow-ups. Not only did he bet on his own unders, he bet on the Raptors to lose too. I noticed in a certain story that, like, he took him to lose. And, like, that's, I mean, again, just deliberate.
Wow, shocker. Jontay threw the ball into the stands. I wonder why he did that.
Yeah. You have to make an example out of this guy. You have to let it be known that we're not going to tolerate this. Two more things. One, to me, it's like, Pete Rose isn't allowed in the Hall of Fame because he gambled on games. Pete Rose never bet on the Reds to lose. Mm-hmm. Like, he always took them to win. It wasn't like
hard.
He was...
It is.
You're not delivering, and that's where I take issue with. But three, this is the reality. The NBA, the NFL, all the sports have to deal with this. We have promoted, and even this show, like, we are so far in on gamble. Hey guys, you think about gambling? Hey, have you thought about gambling? Like, you do this so much, it's like you have just opened the door for. We've normalized it. We have regulated it. We have made it a part of. And so it's like, it's so easily accessible that this is the danger where, again, we don't know how deep this rabbit hole goes. Is the ref's little cousin putting down a 10K bet? Is, homie, the 14th guy on this team's bench, is his little brother putting down? We don't know, man, because back when, it used to be journalists or insider people of the sports putting down these bets, just in Vegas, because you could only put bets down there. So you'd have to get your information, you'd have to go to Vegas and place the bet. And now that it's so easily accessible, it's like anybody with that edge, it's just a lot easier to get away with, man. And Jontay just happened to be so dumb and leave such a big trail of breadcrumbs that he got caught. It's just so easily accessible and so heavily promoted that this is the danger that we have run, that we have opened Pandora's box to gambling in the sports world, because we know how much money it's going to generate for the sports leagues. But again, with that, you have to take with it that these guys who are very close to the sport are going to try to push the limits and do it. I don't think Jontay is the only one, but I think Jontay is the one that got busted. And like you said, you have to do this. You have to make an example out of him and let people know, if you get caught doing this, you're done.
100%. There's just no other way to approach it, because I think you're right that there are probably, if not certainly, like a few other players, probably very Jontay Porter-esque in terms of their level, who are like doing this, or there's guys who's considering doing it, and then now they have to reckon with, all right, well, is it worth the fact that if I get caught, my career is over? That's how you handle it. That's how you have to handle it. And it is a new reality that we have to deal with. You're absolutely right. This is just what happens when sports gambling becomes ubiquitous, and there can just be no tolerance for it. So that's going to do it for us here today, guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, as always, there's plenty more Nerd Sesh content. We have more playoff content coming, our full playoff preview tomorrow. We've already, again, previewed half the first round series now, so you can find all of those on our YouTube page. You can listen to the full shows across audio platforms. You can follow us across social media, TikTok and Instagram at Nerd Sesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. If you want to see clips from the show, if you want to see our trivia content, and you can check out our merch if you want at thevolume.com. We got that hat Logan's wearing. You can also join our Discord if you want. That link is at the link tree across our social media bios. And by the way, forgot to mention, Matthew Sponhour is in there. And Matthew Sponhour has been dissed. Matthew Sponhour has been potentially sent to his grave, along with Theo Ash and Bladen Kirk. If you guys didn't see it, I dissed those podcasters. I dissed those silly little boys. And what do you think, Logan? What'd you think?
I mean,
you like
Carson effectively dropped Ether. You know, he did what Nas did to Jay-Z. That's what Carson did to the Stay Hot Boys. They're done. They're done for. I don't think they can ever come back.
And then on top of it, what did I do? I tacked a musical. I tacked on a musical because that's what they said. They said, oh, we'd write a better musical than them. Oh, ha, 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 ha. No, you wouldn't. Because I wrote a musical about the Malice in the Palace and how that led the league to a state of crisis and prompted David Stern to infuse LeBron with black magic and steroids and try to save the league by making him the face. But ultimately, he's nothing but a pawn in a industry plant. So, bet you guys didn't know that. Now you do.
And when LeBron retires, they're going to clone LeBron, and we're going to have LeBron 2.
Yeah, well, that one is Bronny, and that went very poorly. He ended up being a lot shorter and a lot worse. Yeah, but they tried.
Gave it the old college try, man. It was worth it.
Gave it the old college try. So anyways, if you want to check out that diss track, you can. And stay hot. You messed with the wrong podcasters. All right. Appreciate you guys as always. With that, I've been Carson Breber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.